Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. It is my pleasure to be hosting the Ask Me Anything sessions for the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. I know that there are so many of you so excited for our guest today. And, obviously, I am as well. We're deeply, deeply honored to have Rosalyn Bruyere hosting our AMA session today, our Ask Me Anything session. And we have, I know, a number of practitioners joining us today, as well as patients who are joining us, and folks who are just learning about the biofield and new to the biofield. And some of you may even be new to our collaborative, our nonprofit collaborative that's hosting this. We're called the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. And as I'll share with you in a moment in Rosalyn's bio, Rosalyn has been a founding scientific advisor for the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. I'm also really pleased to have been her student and be her student over the years. I want to tell you a little bit about the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. We're a nonprofit collaborative that forwards the science and practice of healing. So if you are new to us, and you, especially if you're a practitioner or you want to learn more about the science behind healing, I want to direct you to an awesome resource that we have. And you can find it really easily by going to reportonhealing.com. Reportonhealing.com will take you to state-of-the-art resources, including reports and infographics, databases. If you're a healing practitioner that's looking to share the science behind what you do so that you can augment your healing in clinics and hospitals, please share this report widely with your community. You'll find it, I think, very useful. We obviously also host educational events like these Ask Me Anything sessions and webinars every month. We do them twice a month, and we have been sometimes called the PBS of healing, and for good reason, because we've really tried to draw upon the wisdom of our healing elders as well as scientists and bring everyone's collective wisdom to the table as we learn to heal ourselves and help humanity lead us to heal ourselves. We are a nonprofit. So we ask if you're feeling the call to be part of our community. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can join as a contributor. You simply go to chi.is/join. I think it'll be in the chat window. It's $108 a year. It's tax deductible donation. And you will access this AMA as well as all other AMAs, webinars, monthly meditations. We do as much as we can to support you. And so we ask for your support as well. Now, thank you for listening to all of that spiel. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce our guest today, Reverend Rosalyn Bruyere, who I know for many of you needs no introduction, but for those of you who may be new to Rosalyn, she is a grandmother of healing practice and healing science. So many of her practices have been incorporated in healing traditions, modern healing traditions, also stem from ancient healing traditions. So those of you who practice healing touch, therapeutic touch, might recognize some of the practices that Rosalyn has taught in those sectors. Rosalyn is also an oracle for the Tibetan Bompo tradition.
Oh my.
She has learned with the native elders. She is also a pioneer in healing research, having worked with Elmer Green and Valerie Hunt for many decades, not only just advising on, but collaborating deeply and expanding the scientific research on healing. And of course, she has an engineering degree and is a clairvoyant. So her contributions to the scientific arena have been tremendous as well. She has a nonprofit of her own called Healing Light Center Church, and we will be sharing the website for that. If you feel called to make a donation to Healing Light Center Church, we ask that you support her teaching and her practices as well. On that note, Rosalyn, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my privilege. I do need to correct you. I wish I had a degree in engineering, but I'm a college dropout. I had to go back to school to get my degree in theology, and I'm glad I did. I'm in the right place with an engineering background. Theology is a great place to be. So much of our modern world is determined by 250 years of good engineering in the modern era and thousands of engineering feats that were accomplished in the ancient world. And as all of us now, I've been here in lockdown for 10 and a half months. I live in Los Angeles, and we're one of the most locked down cities in the country. So I've seen the inside of my house a lot. And I'm sure I'm like a lot of other people. We're all ready to completely redo our homes, but we can't go out and get what we need to do that. So we're just sitting in this old energy. So during this time, I've taken up a absent healing practice, which I never worked at very hard. I did it. I'm a pastor, so if you ask me to pray for you, of course I'm going to pray for you. But I pray like a healer. And I want to talk about that because this is what we do when we're locked down. And then I'm happy to answer any question ever because I'm a big proponent of teaching by questioning. So if somebody can ask you a question and you can hear what they're trying to ask you, maybe you can take them out of the muck. So question and answer is the way I've always taught. So what happened was I was inspired last January to teach my week-long seminar on absent healing. I've never taught a seminar on absent healing in my life. And in a month, we were beginning all the process of being in lockdown where we weren't going to be with our patients. Now, as an absent healer, I've always done it the same way. I literally sit wherever I am in the world and I put my hands in front of me like this, not up on the screen, obviously, but kind of in my lap, so that when I'm praying for somebody, I'm literally sending them energy. So I do it as much like I would do it if they were in the room with me as I possibly can. So I have this practice. I'm working with 13 women, all pastors from my organization, and people send us these prayer requests. And so we're working with San Antonio Methodist Hospital's COVID ward because one of us is there. We're working with people in Kentucky. We're working with people all over California, of course, Canada, Germany. We're getting requests all the time. And then we kind of text back and forth to each other. When I was working on so-and-so, I felt that the problem was in the spine. Did anybody else feel what I felt? So we're not just sending energy and praying for someone. We're then consulting the 13 of us on our own psychic process, where our process is discussed with other people doing the process so that we're getting a double kind of benefit and practice. And also it keeps us from being bored, to tell you the truth. One of the big killers of a lot of our spiritual practice is that we do the same thing over and over and over again until we're bored with it and don't have the sense to add something or subtract something or share something so you could get some juice and perspective from a different direction. So I've been doing that mostly. It takes me about, I would say, anywhere from an hour to 3 hours daily to do this work. But I also get pulled into it at odd hours because I'm on this text chain. So texts come in, and if I'm not doing anything, I'm following my text chain. So the work has been kind of round the clock. And it does remind me of my own spiritual training. I trained in my goodness, 68 and 9 with spiritualists here in Los Angeles. And there was always something that we were doing at some odd hour because our teachers had us, okay, if you wake up at 4 a.m, then you get up and for 20 minutes you do this practice because it's the quietest time in the local area. So we had all these funny things that we did that I didn't particularly carry on as a teacher, but I remember all of them. And I remember them with the kind of fondness that you have for a practice that gets you up at 4 a.m. when you're not going to have to get up at 4 a.m. anymore. So I know that some of these things weren't particularly practical, other than that they were the definition of what a sacrifice was. That you had to be really good at this work, you have to give your time, your energy, and your willingness. And the only way to prove willingness is to do it at some time that's inconvenient for you. And I was given so much really sound spiritual advice about our journey and our pathway that I do look back on all of those experiences with great fondness. And then when I ended up in the Native American world, of course, those ceremonies are 24, 36, 72 hours long. So you basically nap in between spiritual events in those long ceremonies on a reservation. So I'm well acquainted with the allness, and what it did for me when I was a young person, I find that it does for me now. And this is the part I want to talk to everybody about. We're being surrounded right now by people who are very, very afraid. And the amount of fear that you can feel if you go out in public is astonishing. And the way not to participate in fear is to already be participating in something good. So by participating in praying and sending energy and light, I'm not caught up or even tempted to be caught up in these energies that are flying all around me. And as a person who many others are turning to right now, I appreciate having something to do to keep me available instead of having something to do where I worry about other people worrying. I don't find that to be a spiritual practice, because you end up worrying about worrying about worrying about worrying. And it's kind of a black hole. So I'm very much involved in hearing a bad thought and editing it. When I was first in the native world, because I'd had quite a bit of positive thinking training, when they would put me in a ceremony with other people, I was there specifically so that if somebody said something negative while they were praying in a sweat lodge, that I would correct the words and give them a positive twist on what they were asking for. And that was my hired job. My job was to go sweat, which was always a privilege, but also to keep things in the realm where spirit answers. And they answer not only our sincere pleas and our painful pleas, but the universe answers us when we approach the universe on its own terms, which is basically benign. And it's hard to remember how benign when we're in a situation where nothing appears to be benign. Now, one of the things that I've learned, because I live in an apartment complex that is the Healing Light Center's property, and we have 20 tenants. I know more delivery people now than I have ever known in my life. I've learned how to ask them clearly enough questions that if they only speak Chinese, I can find out where they're trying to deliver things to, because most of the people who come here for delivery speak limited English, if any, and a lot of them speak Chinese because of where I live in the city. So it's kind of fun. I know all the neighbors from all the neighboring cities that come up here. We know all the regular delivery people on a first name basis. I'm sure many people watching us are going through exactly the same thing. So that part of this has kind of been interesting because it's a kind of a different landscape every day. And that part I like. So that's my spiel. And my spiel is all about, if you're at home, pray. Just pray. Just meditate. Just do something that puts your mind at rest, even if it's under 5 minutes, and even if it's 20 minutes, because you have 20 minutes, or if you're not sure what you're doing, just sit, get quiet, see if anything comes to you. This is the perfect time for developing all your psychic ability. I have had more psychic experiences this year than I've had in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Because I'm in isolation. I pray all the time. I get spiritual messages from all over the world. I'm getting really good at editing television. Shamini, you know this about me. I'm a news addict, so I watch many hours of news per day. I can tell now when people are lying or when people are stupid. It's so wonderful. So I can tell that somebody's just reading the teleprompter and they have no idea what they're saying. And it's like, okay, I don't have to listen to this.
Uh-huh.
Or I can tell when they're trying to make me think something that I wouldn't normally think. I'm really getting sophisticated at reading that. And the other thing I learned during this from all these Zoom meetings is that I can actually see the aura pretty well on Zoom.
That's fantastic.
It
That's,
really is.
there's a whole discussion that could be had about, and I love everything that you've said so far because you're sharing, as you know, we've had a mental health crisis in the world, not even just in this country,
Yeah,
even pre-pandemic. And for many of us, for many good reasons, it's very easy to fall into the abyss, and we all know that. Okay, if we aren't stressed out, it
yeah,
would probably be weird. Okay, almost all of us would
that's
feel
right.
stressed out during a pandemic, but you're bringing us back to the nature and the helpfulness of spiritual practice, as a way, not only just as a coping skill, but as a way of discernment,
Hmm.
and an ability to sort of see what's around you and know what you kind of want to be a part of and what is not, to reunite
That's
with that spiritual core, which is the heart of healing itself, right? And
right.
I just wanted to mention that I really loved hearing what you said about collective practice and what you're doing with your healers right now in terms of the praying. And I've
Yeah.
heard this from other groups of healers too. For example, we're running a study right now examining a distant sound healing approach for anxiety. And one of the things that's happening is that the practitioners, there are about 6 or 7 of them in the study, are getting together and providing feedback on a regular basis
Oh,
about what
wonderful.
they're finding. They're iterating. So there's all this wonderful healing innovation going. And as you know, we're also excited about the possibilities of what, we can be doing on the etheric side right here in our own home
Right.
as we're going through this pandemic. So thank you so much for that.
You're
A
welcome.
reminder to those who are chatting. I see all these wonderful thank you to everyone who's saying hello from Germany, from California, from all over the world. It's amazing. If you have a question for Rosalyn, the easiest way for me to find them is if you go to the bottom of your screen and you'll see something that says Q&A. And you'll see right now there's a number 4 there. Believe me, there will be many more. And thank you for all the contributors who have already sent questions. Of course, you do get first in line preference as a contributor to send those questions. We will do our best to get to everyone's questions today, though. Please do go to Q&A if you have a question, type it in. And if you see a question that's almost exactly like what you were going to ask, you can upvote it. That way I know if I see a question that has like 10 people saying, yeah, I really want this question asked, I know to go there.
Oh, cool.
So, Rosalind, we have questions from practitioners, we have questions from patients, and of course, questions from those who are just beginning to learn about the area and want to know more. I'm going to ask a question that I think could benefit everyone, whether you're a practitioner, patient, or just learning about healing. This one comes from Mary Ellen, and the gist of her question is really about grounding and how best to ground. So she
Oh, yeah.
says,
You sent me that one ahead of time.
oh,
Um,
yes.
I think, if you're not an engineer or a scientist, or if you're old enough to remember that you used to have a ground wire in a house so that if lightning hit it, it wouldn't take your house out. People don't understand what grounding is. And because if we're talking just about your energy body, you as a being of light, you have to have energy coming into your system and leaving your system all the time. As as people become more in groups and more interactive with other people, a lot of our energy comes from other people. It doesn't come from Earth itself. Because over time, as we've intellectualized ourselves, we kind of live in the top of our body and not the bottom of our body. So, what people forget is the biggest source of energy you'll ever have is the Earth itself. She's way bigger than your brother-in-law that tends to fill you up when he comes over. That's nothing compared to how much energy you could be taking from Earth. But you'd have to know that it comes up your body. People are always trying to pull things in through the top of their head. And the important thing to understand about chakras is your feet chakras are big because your feet are big. Your feet are bigger than your hands. So your hand, I'm going to hold my hand up. My hand chakra is right here. Well, on my foot, it's that big. And you have 2 of them. So you have 2 suction cups that could be filling you over and over again. So when you walk, when you breathe, it's supposed to come up your legs and into the core of your body, and then your body uses it for whatever activity you're involved in. The best way for me, because I'm not a terribly grounded person, I make myself be grounded. Before I get out of bed in the morning, I turn, sit up in bed, put my feet on the floor, and start the sucking before I walk to the bathroom. I start right there. And when I get up from a chair I'm sitting in, I put both my feet down and start sucking before I start walking. Because otherwise, I'm walking to something. I'm not standing in power before I walk to do something. So I might be taking an empty vessel off to do a task, and I don't want to. I want to take a full vessel. So I think just doing those practices, I find Qigong very helpful for people who are not grounded, particularly a set that's called Shanggong, that you will have seen if you visited our website, because my husband teaches a form of it, but also you'll see it at health conferences all over the world. Different people will do different forms of it, but pretty much the same. So it's not something you wouldn't be familiar with if you were in the alternative movement. And it's a slight bit of movement. And for getting grounded and staying grounded, a little movement is way better than sitting in meditation, not moving. And that's one of the things that I think is hard. Healing and mysticism are not exactly the same skill set, though they have overlapping skill sets. So for healers, the grounding is so terribly important because we want to be full more than we want to be empty. And we don't want to source our family. I mean, if I were only sourcing my own personal family, I could be making somebody well and making them sick. That's crazy. You want the support to come from something big enough to give you support. So I think that's as much as I want to say about it, but I'm always happy for that question because I think it's important.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And so for those who are just beginning the practice, opening up the soles of the feet, opening up the chakras on the bottom of the feet, letting your feet touch the earth when you get up in the morning, right when you get out of bed, and just letting your feet really deeply sink into the earth and opening to that source of energy is key, and doesn't require spoons and doesn't require anything special. You don't need a pan, you don't need anything, just your feet.
Well, I thought that was cool because you sent me that question ahead of time, and I
Mhm.
still can't figure out what they're doing with the spoons.
With the spoons, I know, I thought the same thing. I thought, what do
What are
the
they doing
spoons have to do?
with spoons?
Just a quick question, because this gets asked about grounding. Do you recommend that people go barefoot in the earth? Do you feel like if people can go barefoot, that it's a good
No,
thing?
makes no difference.
Okay.
Um, I recommend that people have their foot supported. So if you have feet that bother you and you need, some kind of an arch support, that's going to help you flex it in the right way because it's actually pumping. So barefoot would be good if you lived in a barefoot culture. Um, when I travel to Hawaii, nobody takes their shoes in the house. They all walk in barefooted, and they think that it's making them more grounded. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. But no, I don't recommend any of those kind of things other than comfortable feet. I do take care of my feet the way I take care of my hands because soft skin feels the aura better than rough skin. So the thing that's wrong with being barefoot is you're going to get so calloused you won't be able to feel anything with your feet. And so, that's just something I do. Many people don't think it's necessary. Um, it probably isn't.
Well, it's a great question. It's a great thing that you're mentioning, because one of the many questions that we're getting, and yeah, apologies, I'm realizing now that y'all can't see the questions, but I can. And there's a good number at this point. There are about 30 or so questions, plus the ones that folks sent in beforehand. So I apologize if we don't get to all of them, but I will do my best to make sure we get to most of them, if at all possible. But one question, and I think a lot of folks would have this question, is around self-care as a healer, both self-care as a healer and self-care in the time that we're in right now.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned, for example, taking care of your hands and feet as
Yes.
as a healing practitioner. You've mentioned that before. Any other advice that you give to both people who are just, how do they maintain a state of equanimity during this time? And if you're doing healing work during this time, how do you continue to take care of yourself? Of course, you mentioned grounding as one way. You have other advice as well.
Yes, I do. I'm a big proponent of self-care for healers. We need to get as much energy as we give. In fact, we need to get more than we give. We need to top off the tank on a regular basis. So you need to analyze your life. What do you actually get energy from? Well, I get it from my dogs. I get it from my backyard. I get it from my grandchildren. I get it from my spiritual practices. I gain a lot of comfort from doing handcrafts. So I've been doing all those things, of course, because like all of you, I'm at home. But I also have to go through and remind myself of what I spiritually know. And one of the things I know is that we are not suffering from a lack of resources. We are suffering from a lack of allocating resources. So I want to put my energy in helping people allocate resources, because for the most part, we have plenty of benign energy that we could be channeling. We just let ourselves get the dreads. I call them the dreads. Where you dread encountering someone, you dread answering the phone, you dread watching the television, you dread being online. You just get a bad case of the dreads. Dreads are bad. A good case of the optimism, not foolishly, would really be helpful right now. So for self-care, I want to review my spiritual practices. I want to take the ones that make me feel good today and do those, not necessarily do the ones that I think I should do. One of the things I remember from my old metaphysical practice is none of us want to end up with neck and shoulder pain.
Love it.
Yeah, well, because there's all these spiritual things I should be doing. Well, no, you should be doing what makes you feel uplifted, what makes you feel connected. Connected is probably the biggest one for me. I know how connected I am to my group of healers, because in the middle of doing something else, one of them will pop into my head. So I know that someone somewhere else just popped me in their head and I got the pop back. And those are the kinds of things that we could be doing. My granddaughters now are big enough that they help me with some of the tech things. My granddaughter helped me zoom into you guys today. And what I notice about their generation is, because they're grandchildren, and all the grandmothers listening to me will know about this, you have this gooey love for grandchildren that isn't the same as what you have for your children, isn't the same for your significant other. It's different. And I have been giving my older women friends advice, because we're all reaching an age where we don't want any more pictures taken of us, right? People still want to see us. That should be our first clue that we still have to take pictures. But there's a trick that all of us could use. I could look at my computer, because I can see your face, and I could look at you as though you were one of my grandchildren. And I would just got it? You got the difference? Yes, of course. Because I would love a conversation like this with a grandchild. Luckily, I don't need it. They live next door.
It's
So I
beautiful.
actually see my grandchildren. But you can put yourself in the right frame of mind to do what's needed. And by the way, if I encounter people when I'm out in the world, which I almost aren't, I mean, maybe once or twice a week, I actually leave the house. But I'm going to encounter people who are walking around in their dread pot. I need to smile at them like I'm their grandmother, because they need to react that way to feel better themselves. So if I go into a doctor's office, I'm lighting up the staff because in a way, they're serving an older woman. So they're serving a grandmother. So there's a principle about the grandparent or the elder that we've all been taught we need to take care of our elders, but our elders need to return the consideration and care because it's going to make us feel better. It's going to make them feel better. And it starts to be a love bombing that goes back and forth. Now, let me tie this back to healing energy. Everybody has this vague, odd belief that love is very healing. I don't know if love is, but energy is. And if the best way for you to send more energy is to love on something, then that should be your basic first beginner technique. Love on something and it will flourish. Love on your plants, love on your pets, love on your neighborhood. Imagine, I have a healer that's been doing this for years. She lived in a disadvantaged neighborhood. So she started putting a prayer circle first around the 4 neighbors that were on the 4 sides of her. And then she spread it out to 8. And then she spread it out to 24 because that was the next jump. And she kept putting light over her whole neighborhood so that she could cut down on negative encounters in the area that might lead to something actually quite damaging. So this was a practice she did. I'm going to say she doesn't live in that neighborhood anymore, but I'm pretty sure she's still working on that neighborhood because when she left to go live near her family, I know she put all that prayer energy into that neighborhood. I know she'll never leave that neighborhood in many ways.
It's beautiful. It actually relates to a question that Christina's asking on what is the role of unconditional love in healing work?
Oh, wonderful. You know what? If you don't have unconditional love, you can also use conditional love. Sometimes we just get so lofty. You know, because I do some dog rescue, if you love the breed of dogs that you rescue, and I do, I'm a greyhound rescue person, I have no trouble ever loving the most unruly greyhound in the world. Yeah. I can just love on that dog and love on that dog unconditionally. I don't always feel that way about other breeds of dogs. I don't feel that way about other people sometimes. So I can love them conditionally. I can love them because they need me to love them, not because I'm high enough to give them the purest love possible. I hope I channel beings that can give them that love. I hope. I try to. I try to empty myself because why? If I can get a high energy, and recently I did a little talk for my own community on Guadalupe, on the celebration of Guadalupe's annual celebration, which is a very big deal here in Los Angeles. And what I noticed is that when I could feel that presence around me, there was something beautiful and I think unconditional, certainly compassionate that came through me. Every time that comes through me, I get closer to being able to match it.
Beautiful.
Through experience, my body learns it, even if my psyche and my intellect can't cope. What comes through is more significant in what's given and more significant in transforming me than not giving it. And I think the really important thing about giving energy is you actually get better at it. It's incremental. It's small at first, but practice, practice, practice. Shamini, you and I have talked about this just in terms of athletics, because you're such an athlete. Once you've done an athletic thing, 20 years can go by and you're not the athlete you were 20 years ago, but your feet still go in the same place and your arms still go in the same place. I did a little tiny bit of training in karate, and if somebody throws something at me, I block. I do it automatically. I don't even think about it. My body knows how to block. So I'm not maybe fast as I should be, but I'm not going to get hit with a garbage can because I'm going to block. And the more you do it, the more your tissue has the memory of it. You get a tissue memory that's really significant and important. You know, another one of those cute little things that us metaphysicians say is that the issue's in your tissue. Well, not only is that true when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with somebody, but it's there when you're trying to figure out what could be right with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often as healers, and it depends upon the field you've chosen to heal in, but people spend way too much time on the problem and not enough time on the solution. So, you know, in our training program, I've always tried to get the healers to not spend, if they're going to spend a 50-minute hour with someone, you've got 10 minutes to deal with the problem, because the rest of the time needs to be on the solution, not an hour of delving into the problem and draining the energy out of the system. So, and that's because of the kind of healing we do. Not, I'm not saying that there aren't people who need to do their whole time on the problem, because that's what their job is. But I think that it's important for us to carry energy around with us and see what happens. In fact, I know that some of us actually walk into a room and the room gets better and nobody knows why. Well, they don't need to know why. We just turn the volume up
Mm-hmm.
of benevolence in the room, because we don't let ourselves spend time in non-benevolent activity, so
Mm-hmm.
that we don't vibrate that way.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
really
I,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the biggest challenge of the time we're in. It's been really hard to keep yourselves in benevolent practice. And I feel fortunate because I live in a household where both my husband and I do practices that put us in that zone all the time and can keep us there. So I, I I'm sorry to say it's easier for us, but it is easier for us because we don't have the resistance that some of y'all have when you're trying to keep in that
Well, it's like
framework.
with everything, it's all practice, 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 right?
Right,
Whether it's an art form, whether it's a
right.
physical skill. And here, I think what I hear you saying is, first of all, back to the role of unconditional love of healing. Yes, there is there is a connection with unconditional love and healing, and most of us aren't in the practice of experiencing through our own persona and ego unconditional love all the time, and yet we can connect to those flows of unconditional love and the beings that emulate them and learn from them, and in that practice we're healing ourselves as well as others. So, and you're encouraging us to do these kinds of practices and do the spiritual practices and do the grounding so that we can connect to those benevolent flows. And it's a
Yeah,
process, right? It's not like you said, here I am, I'm perfect, I radiate unconditional love all the time and now I can heal. It doesn't quite work that way, right? Because
no,
we're all human. And yet, even as imperfect beings that don't always experience unconditional love, we can heal ourselves and others. I really also want to just punctuate and highlight something that you said, because we have a lot of questions around how to work with trauma. So we have questions from practitioners and people on, how do I clear trauma in myself? I've tried so hard. How do I do it? We have questions from practitioners. How do we work with PTSD and trauma? How do we work with sort of schisms in the psyche or personality where things feel fragmented? I mean, there are a whole lot of questions that I'm getting from practitioners and people about how do we deal with fragmented selves, trauma felt in the body. And so I would love for you to share, maybe related to what you said about focusing on the problem and maybe also focusing on the solution. What is some wisdom that you can share with us around that?
well, I had a wonderful summer, 30 maybe years ago, where I was experimenting with people who had a lot of trauma. I happened to have in my program at the time a lot of people who had been abused physically and sexually, and getting that kind of trauma out of them turned into a lot of difficult things. And one of the the things that I learned the most, that helped me the most to get through that, was we did a practice where we would take not one healer per patient, but four. We would put four benevolence to one trauma so that we could get enough flow in that body that was neutral to good instead of the dread. Um, I like the term dreadnought, um, in terms of not the way it's used necessarily in weaponry, but in the way we could not support dread. So it takes a lot of energy, first of all, because when people have had a trauma, the trauma itself is a high, high energy event. And it goes in at frequencies and amplitudes that are big. So this was my attempt to see if I could overwhelm the bigness of it and do a filling or an energy experience that would challenge the authority of the thing that was bigger. So if you think about traumatic events of any kind, they are energetically so big that they take up authority in your life, so that they're not letting you think of anything else, because the biggest energy is still the trauma.
Mhm.
So if I can sneak in with energy, which would take me as an individual healer months maybe to help, but if I take a bunch of healers, or in the native tradition, they take a big ceremony, something that makes a big energy, to
Mhm.
start to move it along, because they are energetically challenging the event. So I've been in ceremonies where I was in the center of the healing, where 65 people were chanting around me and singing, and I go into states of consciousness that you just can't imagine, because there's nothing in my white world that matches that kind of ceremony. And it's not the religious tradition that I come from either. So that was how I got the idea of adding more, and then studying the quantity of the problem and the quality of the problem. So amplitude and frequency in engineering terms, and figuring out an amplitude that would impact them benignly. One of the worst things about the situation we're in now is it is so much easier to send hate than love, because we have so many examples of this targeted energy. And, the Egyptians were very wise. And they said a long time ago, like thousands of years, like 4,000 years ago, that once in a while evil wins over good, because evil is organized.
Mhm. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Well, when you're instantly angry and hateful towards someone, that's a direct line of energy. It's
Mm.
not a maybe I'm a little mushy kind of dislike. It's not like that. It's like,
Mhm.
and love is more like, whoa, whoa, it goes in these big waves.
Mhm.
Well, it takes a lot of big waves to disrupt that straight shot. So here we have these people who are suffering terribly, because their brain is hiccuping. It keeps going back into the state. So the two or three things I do is, one, use more people. Two, I do a healing technique where I soften the area of the neck and shoulders with energy, so that they really get into a deep state. And that's when you start pushing energy through them, just pushing to get them to have a full body experience of having the dread pushed out of them.
Mhm.
And so those are things that I do for my people, and that most of the healers I've trained would certainly know how to do. Um, but the other thing is, after you've worked with those people, you have to not spend the wrong kind of time recording the event.
Tell us more. What you mean by that?
Every time you think about their problem, you need to be respectful and think about their solution.
I love
So
that.
that you leave the universe with the energy going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Because the people that we work with are really with us for an hour, unless you count washing dishes and thinking about them, watering plants and thinking about them, whatever else goes on. When you think about them, you have a responsibility to not just think about their problem, but think about their solution, so that you're pushing the energy all the time from your psyche in the right direction. I think it makes a big difference. The other difference it makes is you stop worrying, because you left your own brain in the right state, as opposed into the worry and dread state. Because actually, our patients model after us. I mean, I know all of us have been taught not to get involved in transference and all of that. Well, first of all, as a healer, you're in transference the whole time, or countertransference. So their transference onto you as the parental figure is automatic, and it's energetic. So it's not really a question of not mothering them for me. It's a question of, am I a decent mother? When I think of them, do I think of them as growing up, as getting better? Or is my last thought about how fragile they are?
This is, thank you for that, because you're speaking about a really important practice that healing practitioners need to engage in for the patient's or the client's benefit, right? And also for our own. And there are a number of questions that people are asking. We talked about self-care for healing practitioners, but because I'm seeing this question come up over and over, I think maybe we ought to address it. And that is,
Okay.
there's some concern, I think, or questions around, how do I clear myself after working on someone? And I know that you have thoughts about that, so I would love for you to share those.
Well, actually, we've been talking about it. How you clear yourself is you end on a high note with
Mhm.
energy that's clean running through you. That's how you do it. And if you find yourself bogged down later, you sit down and clear yourself again. But it's grounding, it's bringing the energy through you that's clear. Mother Earth energy is not going to crawl up into your body and amplify the bad. It's going to come through you and make you you again, because that's what that energy does. It takes you back to your reset. And as you heal and years pass, which is what's happened for me, my set point is way higher now than it was 30 years ago,
Mm.
or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 2 years ago, or before the pandemic. My set point is higher now than it was before the pandemic, because I've had the luxury of time, which is something healers never have in their life. We never have the luxury of time. Well, we do now. I
Mhm.
mean, we walk around the house looking for something to do.
Mhm.
That's unusual. None
Mhm.
of us have ever had the time to do that. So I do so many practices so many times a day that my set point, uh, my need for having myself in a state of mind that's excellent is just much higher. I don't tolerate, uh, there's a whole bunch of things I don't tolerate. Now, all of you guys that know me know that I'm a TV addict and that I'll watch hours of television a day. But I'm real funny now. I won't watch anything that'll bum me out.
Mhm.
Just enough to know the news, and just enough to watch something that makes me happier.
Yeah.
And that's very different for me, because pretty much I would watch anything. I mean, I've been known to go to Germany and watch German television when I don't speak German, and entertain myself reading the auras on German television. It's like, but now I won't do that.
Beautiful. Okay, I want to honor those who are asking more sort of technical slash esoteric questions, which I
Okay.
think will be fun to jump into because we haven't been talking about those. So, Valerie asked, she said these two things that she's asking have often been debated among her circle of healer colleagues. One question is, do the chakras create the auric field? And the second related question is, if we bring up energy from the earth into the chakras, could it inadvertently activate the kundalini?
Why would it be inadvertent?
I had the same question.
My
So
God, I hope it activates the Kundalini. Um, healers can't do anything without it. Okay, now that I've had my laugh, let me be serious because it was a serious question.
So do the chakras create the auric field, I suppose, is the first question. Is the auric field, from your perspective, really comprised of chakra energy, or is there more to it than that?
No, there's a lot more to it than that. The interaction of the chakras with all the other living fields on the planet is what makes the aura up. So your aura is every bit of energy that you're exposed to 24 hours a day, even in your sleep. The chakras don't exactly create it, they just transmute it. They don't stop moving just because you went to sleep or because you're not meditating. They're still moving at rates of speed that are so fast and fine that we don't relate to them directly. We relate to them indirectly. So what's important to know about this for the practitioner is to unlimit your idea of what energy is so that you realize that there's differences in energy, but that your chakra system tries to take all energy and make it available and usable for you. That's what they do. They're tuned to you and your mission and your goal and your life. And so all the energy that they gather as you go through the world, they then put on frequencies that you can directly use. So if I walk into an arboretum somewhere and I'm surrounded by beautiful foliage, my chakras go, thanks, I needed this. Or if I go into Walmart and I'm bombarded with messages about sale prices, my chakras go, thanks, that's refreshing. They don't actually say yes and no. They perceive all energy as usable. Let me just tweak this a little and then this energy will be usable. That doesn't mean I'm going to like everything the same way, but it does mean that I'm not walking around in danger. There's no danger out there just because things have a different energy.
This is a really important point, and maybe for some relates to the discussion around the kundalini, because as you know, there is a lot of concern that people have about inadvertently activating the kundalini, and the sense that the only way to activate the kundalini is it comes full force through your body. You have no control over it, and something bad happens.
No,
So yeah, could you enlighten us a little bit on your perspectives of the kundalini energy?
all this flow of energy that we have going through us that we've been talking about from the beginning is constantly expanding the Kundalini energy into a more and more usable state. You can open it slowly or you can open it all at once. So remember, we were talking about trauma. If you get a big blast of energy and you're already prepared to open up all at once, you will. There's no harm in that. But that's not what usually happens. 99.9% of the time, you constantly reach a higher level and a higher level and a higher level, but no blast, no heat, and no unconscious moments. None of that happens. You just get a feeling of fullness, of well-being. When the Kundalini is working for us, our faces are actually better because there's this push up of the energy coming up our face. And that's the normal process that all spiritual people go through. It's interesting to me because it's all the people that studied Eastern religion, apparently, or came at it from psychology or something else, that think they're going to have these Kundalini experiences. The native tribes, when it happens to them, it happens in ceremony and they expect it. And what they do for the people that are having this experience is they lay them down on a blanket on the ground and feed them good food until they feel better. And it's no big deal. It's like, okay, you were in a sweat lodge and this opened and you're having a little trouble breathing. So come with me and we'll lay on the ground and I will feed you cornmeal and tamales and all these good things. Um, it's only this perspective of people who are trained to be afraid of experience. My biggest fear for my people, the healers, is that they will have been trained too much in danger, fear, trauma, because it's part of their profession. So they have to know about it and what it looks like. But then it leaves with them this doubt at the back of their head that something bad could happen if they get given God's gift to us of feeling really well, really full of energy, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So they allow themselves to worry about something that isn't what they're really worried about. And when I work with people who have these fears, I always want to know what's really bugging them. I suspect they're afraid of some other loss, not this loss.
Mm. So speaking of loss, one of the questions and this will be the last question, second to last question, if that's okay. But
Okay.
this may be worth, I mean, we would love to stay with you, Rosalind, as long as you want to stay. I want to respect your time. And I know, we're coming up on the hour. And I also want to thank everyone who sent in questions. We have done our best to consolidate your questions in the brief amount of time. And I hope that we'll have more opportunities to be with Rosalind again. But another question that is coming up for a number of people as we've been talking about grounding and connecting with the earth and feeling her energy is the pain that many of us are feeling about what is being done to the earth and in society. So, questions about the energy field of the earth. Are we damaging the energy field of the earth? How does it work for us to connect with the earth when we're damaging her? There's a tremendous amount of guilt that I'm seeing, kind of coming through these questions and
Yep.
and questions about the appropriateness of of all of this, the earth connection, given the way that we humans have been treating the earth. So any thoughts you have about that for folks?
Yeah, I have some thoughts about it. We shouldn't be treating the earth any differently than we treat other venerables in our life. If we're worried about the earth, we should be putting something into her as well as taking some things out. And what earth wants is plants and animals. So every time we put back a plant or an animal, we're feeding earth. Every time we're making compost piles, we're feeding earth. Every time we are giving her something, we're getting more intimate with her and we can feel her better and make better choices about what we feed her. People get themselves very caught up in the damage that's being done and the blame of those they perceive as damagers. It is so much better for us to put back into earth what we can put back into earth than to be involved in yet another drain of energy that she has to ground. Earth is a very benign, loving energy. I'm so lucky. I live somewhere where there's a mountain behind my house, and I can walk up that mountain anytime I want to and have a real conversation with my local earth. And my local earth often tells me when there's difficulty and danger in my city. In fact, I've known about every riot we were ever going to have for the last 35 years because I walk that mountain and she tells me, oh, that part of the city is going to have a problem. I go, okay. And I go back to my house and I light a candle and I do my work for that part of the city. I find that more useful and it makes me a better person. And the better person I am, the smarter I become about all the other things that have to do with cherishing the earth. So I need a direct relationship. So I need to plant a tree, plant a flower, make a compost pile. I need to do that part. That's personal. But I also globally need to get everybody quieter and everybody better at sharing all the information than just sharing the information that riles somebody up.
Mhm.
We need all the information. We need to be less rileable so that we can be more helpful. I don't help very well when I'm riled up. I kind of rant. I kind of walk around my house,
Yeah.
ranting like most everyone else does. So I think it's important, because she's our biggest source as healers, that we continuously do something that helps. Um, I think it helps that I have bird feeders. I think it helps that I have children. Because our property is a historic property, we have architects up here 2 or 3 times a year looking at the property because it's an important architectural building. So when they're here, it's my job to show them the architecture. Well, what are they looking at? This is kind of funny. They're looking at the 1910 part of our building, because our original architect, Irving Gill, was building houses for low-income people that would always have fresh light, fresh air. They had skylights, they had a sleeping porch, and he planted fruit trees all over the property because he wanted every house to have a place to hang a baby cradle from.
That's beautiful.
It was green in 1910. Yeah. So I think we forget that we're not the first group of people that ever thought about these things. And we're not the first group of people that had more advantages than disadvantage in being able to do something. I really like the question, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't
Thank
usually get to talk about that, but
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's
you're
just
welcome.
a tremendous amount of beautiful questions, and maybe one that we can consider closing with is a question about how to pray. And I know that you had said were interested in potentially doing a practice, so I wondered if this might be a good opportunity for those who are just kind of learning. How do you pray? How would you do that?
Well, I let myself alter first, and then I actually open a prayer with an opening, um, which is either Native American or Christian, depending upon who I'm with and how I'm with. But in the Native tradition, we call it building the central fire before we ask for something. We build a space by lighting the children's fire. And in that tradition, we do it by saying, grandmother, grandfather, power of the four directions, all of my ancestors, I send a voice. And then in our minds, we ask the question we want answered. We say what we're willing to do. We say how we feel about it. And we ask to be told directly the work we have to do to accomplish something. And then we give thanks till the sun no longer sets and the moon no longer rises. Now, I do this out loud fairly often, so it sounded like I knew what I was doing. When you first pray, particularly out loud, nobody feels like they know what they're doing. They're all embarrassed so practice in your bedroom, practice somewhere where nobody's listening. And then as you're doing that, don't feel like it's a rehearsal. Feel like every time you say, grandmother, grandfather, power of the four directions, that you're about to say something to elucidate the humans on earth. Because I speak for my tribe, and my tribers are the humans. Sometimes I pray for animals, sometimes I pray for the earth, sometimes I pray for many other things. I live in a city where we have a terrible homeless population, so I pray all the time for food. I want there to be enough food for people that are hungry. So that's important. And I don't want to fake it or anything else, which is why I can do it by myself. And if you make a mistake, you just keep praying. I learned this on every reservation. Native American prayers can go on and on and on and on. Why? Because they make a mistake and then they correct the mistake and then they keep going and they make another mistake. They correct the mistake.
Hmm.
And you can tell when they do it, especially when they pray in their own tongue, because you can hear the rhythm change,
Oh,
which is how I learned to do that, is listening very carefully. So I think that the last thing I want to say has to do with who you pray for, because I was in a Hogan ceremony many years ago in Navajo. And we had prayed all night long, and there were rounds and rounds and rounds of prayers. And the very last thing the medicine woman who ran the altar said, she took up this big eagle feather fan that was, the size of my whole arm. And she was shaking it at us. And she said, "There's nothing more important than that you pray for yourself. There is nothing more important than that you pray for yourself. There's nothing more important than that you pray for yourself." And that was the end of our ceremony. And what I understood after praying all night for the people we were praying for, that she wanted us to be included in those we prayed for, that she wanted us to understand that it is an honor to be able to pray for yourself. It's not a burden. It's not something you should feel guilty about. You should just pray for what you want and what you need. And what I want is to be better every day than I was yesterday. Pray for me as I pray for you. Thank you.
Oh, Rosalyn, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, for your wisdom, your vibration, your light. I know all of us are so deeply grateful. And some of you were asking about replays. Yes, you will receive an email with a replay to this. It will be available freely for 48 hours. We know many of you are joining from overseas and it's quite late, and we want you to be able to share this with your friends. If you feel called to support this work, both Rosalyn's work and the work of the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, we have two amazing nonprofits that you can donate to. One is, of course, www.chi.is, or CHI, the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. Rosalyn is a founding scientific advisor. And the Healing Light Center Church, which can be found at rosalynbruyere.org. Check your chat window for that link. You can donate directly to the Healing Light Center Church and support Rosalyn's work also. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful, wonderful, beautiful holidays, and may we all pray together.